What's going on, creators? Yeah, just want to get on here and bring everybody back to now. Appreciate y'all being here and vibing with me for a bit. Yeah, today I got some things to talk about. Hopefully add something positive to your mental diet for today. And yeah, it has to do with focusing on what you actually want and not letting your mind unconsciously focus on what you don't want. It sounds pretty simple, but it's amazing how often we get stuck in these patterns, most of which are unconscious patterns of focusing on what we don't want to happen and then reacting to that, basically the undesirable, and then reacting in the mind and making it real. And then next thing you know, we're spinning the present moment, and kind of free floating anxiety where it's just like there's nothing really obvious to be in a state of fear about, but it's just these little nagging things of like, oh, some existential threat. Maybe you're worried about your finances. You start worrying about just your safety. You start worrying about the safety of people that you love. You start worrying. You just start worrying. And as you're worrying, what you're actually doing in the present moment is focusing, instead of what you do want, on what you don't want. And then a lot of times we get surprised, then when like the undesirable kind of circumstances, events, life situations start to manifest, and realize we've always just kind of been doing that, so taking a kind of ownership of that in the present moment is really important to start making a positive change. So when the undesirable shows up, not to sit there and battle against it, resist it, strengthen it, by making it real. And I gotta go to war against this. I gotta attack this idea and attack this person symbolically representing this idea, and all this kind of shit. Instead, what's a lot easier is to kind of be still, take a deep breath, and ask God what to do. And a lot of times, just in that little space where you're making a new choice, it starts to allow your mind to start focusing in a better direction, start focusing on like a more heavenly direction, a more positive, loving, joyful, peaceful, all the kind of the fruits of the spirit. That as we kind of focus more and more so on like the kingdom of God and God's righteousness, these things are what start to become more manifest in our life. And it's like, well, Michael, when is this going to happen? Is it in some future, after COVID's over, then can we have peace and, actually enjoy life? And it's like, it's only ever now. So it's like this imaginary future where there's this like utopian moment, this you made it moment. And a lot of people have like that moment being like after they die, like there's like this transforming power in death. Which I don't believe is real. I feel like just if we can go on a tangent about that, I feel like what happens in death is just the same thing that's going on now. The past just recreating itself in the present moment, and the tracks that we've laid today we experience in that new state, unknowingly repeating it over and over and over again, in these loops, because time doesn't work linearly like the old mind likes to think, where there's like a past that just dissolves to oblivion that has no bearing on the present moment, and like a future that you can, through force and your ego ideas of separation, manifest in this desired quote unquote future. But the error in that is you're always suffering and grinding in the present moment, and that future never comes, and so you start to look at like the world that is operating in a kind of a weird kind of doubling down on insanity mode when it comes to like COVID. And not to say that that's real, with like the propaganda and just like these illusions from the media, but I've experienced what the world calls COVID. My dad, he's experiencing it at the moment. He's beyond like the quarantine time. He's recovering, still has like a nagging kind of cough, but I'm hopeful for him that he'll bounce back even stronger than he had previously. My grandpa, he just recovered from what I believe is a vaccine injury, where he got a vaccine, and a day later now he had all the symptoms of of COVID. My grandma, when she got her COVID vaccine, she ended up getting shingles and getting really sick from the vaccine. But has also recovered. But like this idea that we have to inject ourselves out of this problem is insane, and like doubling down on it continuously. Oh, it's just 5 shots. Well, just if everybody got it, if a baby in the womb got it, then I can feel safe, and then I can live life like normal again. And then part of that error is thinking that that's going to work. For one, it's part of like the insanity of doing the same thing over and over again, expecting a different result. The textbook definition of insane. But people under the spell of that can't seem to see that, maybe because they haven't had a lot of experience in this process of like manifesting. And unfortunately, if like the collective consciousness is in a state of constantly battling and resisting, it's only strengthening the problem. And not only that, but when you're focused on what you don't want, you have a unconscious pattern of then manifesting the fear, which is ultimately what you don't want. It's like you feel the fear, in the old mind. But once you believe that the fear is real, well, next thing, now it's escalated the energy, and now the energy is now starting to gain momentum. And as it gains momentum unconsciously, whether you're consciously doing this or unconsciously doing it, it doesn't matter. So it's like, do you want to unconsciously continue to manifest fear and worst case scenarios and all this shit to keep reacting to, and just as you're battling against it, slowly being consumed, being drained, into more and more states of fear, suffering, torment, or you can choose to focus on what you do desire and start to experience more and more of that. So it becomes a very basic kind of question to ask yourself, and you're always asking yourself that in the present moment when you become more aware of what you're doing when it comes to this mental chatter, because that's very, 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 very important to start to work on that, renew your mind, and work on that with God, because until you do, a lot of the past will keep recreating itself in the present moment, and a lot of times that past becomes more and more prison-like, becomes more and more undesirable, as the fears become more and more of your experience, because ultimately that fear is resulting from a lack of faith and an identity based on an idea that you are separate from everything, including people, including God, including all you see all these separate forces. It's like, oh, the body's got its own will. It's like there's only God's will that's perfectly unfolding in the present moment. We're constantly reaping what we're sowing in consciousness. And so if you're focusing on what you don't want, what's undesirable, or the things that you're afraid of, if that mental chatter, is going on, ultimately that can all start to be resolved with a change in your identity. Once you realize that old you that believes all of these errors, you crucify that self with Christ, and embrace the new creation that you are in Christ now. It's like the living one. We're all connected in this new body. And as a process of realizing the oneness of that, the connectivity of that, the unity, the way that you can connect in spirit, and experience more and more, of God's goodness and God's peace and God's joy, because where the old mind feels like it's got to struggle and strive and be the one that earns it and deserves it, and it's like, oh, just me on my little pedestal is gonna experience, all these heavenly things. It's in realizing that God does the work, God did the work, and is continuously doing the work. It's not you that has to do anything. You just rest in the knowledge that God's already doing it. And that brings more and more peace in the present moment as you allow, basically, as you're seeing things in the physical world, in the shadow world, realize that's who you were. But that doesn't need to be an experience of who you are now, because so much of our situations in life, our family, our marriage, our money, our jobs, all our health, or all of these things that we've been given to steward and take care of, and grow and evolve, and all these types of things. All of these are basically can be looked at as like a gigantic mirror that mirrors our spiritual relationship with God, our Creator. And it's like a lot of like the limiting beliefs that we have, keep us, where we're at, as far as like maybe like money's a good example, where it's like, say you've been at like, I don't know, 40 grand, 50 grand a year, for like 6 or 7, it's just that's just where your money's at for some reason. A lot of that has to do, with that's how much you've given to yourself and thought that you feel okay with. Any more than that is maybe evil, or it's like you start to push it away. But once you realize, God is your provider, and that God takes pleasure in prospering you, and that you don't gotta worry about the money. It's part of this new flow. And start focusing on what you do desire with it, not what you don't want, because that's what the mental chatter starts to do, that is already keeping you at that level. It's like, that's why in stewarding is really important, because it's like you are already at what you can handle. And until you kind of let go of the limiting beliefs, the assumptions, the dramas, the these little rules that you've created for yourself, until you start letting that go and replacing those with what does God say is real? What does God say is the truth? It's a process of learning the truth, letting go of the errors that have kept you in a state of suffering, kept you in these little boxes where you don't feel good enough, or you don't feel worthy, or you feel guilty, you feel like shameful. All of these types of kind of states of consciousness. As you start focusing more on what you do desire, and with that, you kind of get into the law of attraction, manifesting vibe, the law of assumption. There is a lot of truth in these things, but Jesus told us to, seek first the kingdom of God and God's righteousness, and then all these other things will be added, and so if you're and this is like a trap I've kind of gotten into with like the law of attraction. Not to say that that this is just like a stumbling block for me. It was like always wanting this shit in the future, but then not accepting those spiritual emotions, that energy, those feelings in the present moment. So it's like, oh, well, once I get this increase, then I can feel a certain way. Once I have all of this drama sorted out, then I'll feel a certain way. Not making the connection that a lot of the drama and a lot of the undesirable things that were manifesting were because the mental conversations were focusing on what I don't want, and then, surprise, surprise, in the mirror of reality, then having to react to a bunch of undesirable situations, circumstances, events, thinking that you have to just go through all of this grinding, which is a limiting belief, to get some sort of a payoff, which, from, having a music business, experiencing that on some level, someone having success, just plodding through and just sacrificing and grinding, and the entire thing is miserable. It was just filled with just annoyance, irritation. It made the journey to get to the destination a fucking a trek through like the nightmare. And like there's just like an easier way, but a lot of it has to do with growing your faith, and ultimately Jesus helps you grow your faith by seeing a lot of the things that he was able to do. And he said, in the Bible, that the works that he did, that we could do the same things that he was doing and more. You know, which once you start to see how everything is like spiritual, in like the inner imaginal states, these conversations and all of this type of shit has a gigantic impact on your life and your perception and your situations and the circumstances and all of this other stuff. It becomes a lot more doable. It's like it seems like, oh, I get how he did that. It's like it's almost like with guitar, there's like a certain like maybe magic to it. Where it's just like how you just you're seeing somebody just strum, and it's like, man, that sounds so fucking cool. It's like, how is that possible? What's going on? But then once you practice and then you put it to the test, you are actively repeating these same techniques and things over and over again. It's like you have to act. You have to do when the opportunity arises, because as you focus on what you do desire is just to love, experience love, which is another way of saying experiencing God. And like it's just, the problem is our old mind doesn't know how to do that, because it's based on an error that it's separate from God, which is not part of who you actually are. Who you actually are is part of your identity. Who you really are as a created being is one that's connected with God. It's like it's not possible for you to be separate from creation. It's like you're part of it. And so any idea that like there's all these separate wills going on, and there's like, oh, there's like the will of like my employer, the will of nature, the will of my body. I want my body to feel a certain way, but then it's like, oh, it's got a mind of its own, it's falling apart. It's like, oh, it's got all these separate wills and forces and all of this shit. Once you realize there's only God's will that's perfectly unfolding now, not an imaginary future land, but now. It's like it's not the future that you're doing. You're letting go of the past to change how your present is, so your future is new. It's almost like a garden. It's like once you take complete ownership of your life, what's going on with it, and every aspect, the desirable and the undesirable, all of it. It's easy to take responsibility for the shit that's working and going great. Sometimes there's some hesitation on taking responsibility for the shit show that you've also created. But once you do take like responsibility and ownership, look at it like a garden. It's like you don't just, once all the seeds have been planted, you don't have to sit there and use your mind and personal willpower to make the garden grow, right? It's just, you do the work by planting the seeds in consciousness, and ultimately trusting and allowing God's ways to manifest, and for you to just take your hands back and trust. You're being still and trusting that. For example, it's like, oh, I'm really scared and concerned. Maybe you don't have a job, you just got fired because of some of the shit going on, and there's like this fear of scarcity. It's like, well, by reading and through your spiritual preparation, reading the Bible and all that kind of stuff, and applying these principles and stuff, you start to see that God's will is abundance and prosperity, and not scarcity. Scarcity includes not enough time. Oh, there's not enough friends. There's not enoughness. There's not enoughness. There's plenty. But like, and it's for everybody. I mean, it's like part of like creation. But like, say you're experiencing something in your life that's reflecting scarcity. Well, it's like, well, that's an illusion. That's not the reality of God's ways, right? And so instead of like sitting there battling against it, getting mad at it, strengthening the illusion of separation that you're seeing, making it more real, you can just as easily be still and go, well, I see an illusion, my old mind wants to battle and resist it, I'm going to rest, and I'm just going to trust that God's going to resolve this scarcity illusion and show me abundance instead. I'm going to watch God work, and then just be still and then let it go. Start focusing again on what you do desire, which then is to watch God work in all of these areas in your life. And where your garden was maybe filled with weeds, or nothing was going on with it. It's like maybe you're got like what do you call that, like a little download to go, hey, why don't you go out there and just water it after sunset. And instead of like maybe reacting like, oh, I know best, I'm gonna water it, in the middle of the day or whatever. You just act on that impulse, and you'd be led through a bridge of incidents to the fulfillment at the end of the season, to a bountiful garden. It's like where in the past, it's like you could tell yourself a story about how you're not good at getting the weeds out, or you're not a good gardener. It's like other people have a green thumb. You don't have a green thumb. You start telling yourself all this undesirable shit, all these limiting beliefs, and not allowing the garden to flourish, because you're not taking action, you're not taking responsibility for what's going on with it. It's a process of just, when the moment comes where you need some sort of action taken, go for it. And it's like in those crossroads where it's like the new life that you're dying to experience, one that's filled with love and joy and peace, is on the other side of what your old mind wants to recreate again. It's like you got a crossroad. It's like, do you recreate and do the same shit you've been doing and doubling down on it, and thinking, oh, well, this time is going to be different if I just do more of it, like our governments are doing with this vaccine horse shit. If we just did more of it, then it would work. Or are you going to let that way go and trust what God puts in your path to do, and go for it, and realize that it was inspired, everything was coordinated and put together, orchestrated by divine intelligence for you to walk through it, to experience your desire instead of your undesire, which is fear. And so, yeah, I wanted to bring that to you guys' attention, put that into practice. It's only ever now, so it's like now's the time to do that. And so, or don't, it's, whatever God is instructing you to do, go within, ask, believe, and receive, as Jesus would say. But other than that, I think I'm going to balance. I didn't end up doing any like music or anything yesterday. I was thinking about doing some, like recording some, but then I didn't want to force something then too. I just, if I was going to do it, I just wanted it to happen organically and naturally. And, yeah, and so I just kind of, fiddle farted around the house. and like, I don't know what I'm going to do today. I got, it's today's Sunday. We just got done doing church. My family's still, at my wife's at her parents' house doing like, I think they're making candies and chocolates and Buckeyes and all sorts of stuff. And I don't know if they're going to be back soon or whatnot, but I'd like to get the house clean for them when they get home, and chickens taken care of and all that kind of fun stuff. Maybe work on the honeydew checklist a little bit, and maybe play guitar. Who knows? But I think I'm gonna bounce. So thanks everybody for liking, sharing, commenting, subscribing, all the social networking things. I appreciate your spiritual support and your financial support. Thank you for that. Pennies equals dollars. And so it's like I appreciate any type of support. Thank you for that. And I think that's it. So until the next now, God bless.